morning, everyone, and I guess I should apologize for the parking, but there's not much we can do about it in the summer, but I'm so glad you all came. Welcome to Chats with Champions, sponsored by Skidompha Library and Sherman's Maine Coast Bookstore and Cafe. Today we welcome Elizabeth Berg, the best-selling author of more than 30 books, including novels and short story collections. She has also written a manual on writing entitled Escaping into the Open, and a stage adaptation of her book, The Pull of the Moon. Her books have been translated into 37 languages, and 3 were turned into television movies. Open House was an Oprah Winfrey Book Club selection, and she also has appeared on her show to talk about her books. Talk Before Sleep and Family Traditions. She's received the New England Booksellers Association Award for her body of work, been awarded the American Library Association Book of the Year, and was nominated for Abby, an award for booksellers' favorite books. Elizabeth has been honored by both the Boston and Chicago public libraries. She was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, and when she was 3, her father re-enlisted in the Army, and she grew up on bases from Texas to Germany, sometimes attending as many as 3 schools a year. Returning to this country, she worked as a receptionist in a law firm, a waitress, an actress, and an you know what I mean, and lead singer in a rock band. She later attended the University of Minnesota and St. Catherine's University, where she earned a nursing degree. She says that her 10 years as a registered nurse was her school for writing. Taking care of patients taught her a lot about human nature, about hope and fear, love and loss, regret and triumph, and especially about relationships, often the focus of her work. Elizabeth lives in Oak Park, Illinois with her partner Bill, her dog Gabby, and cat Gracie. It's my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Berg.
For coming out at 10 o'clock in the morning, no less. Are some of you on vacation? Yes. Oh, we're getting extra credit then for getting up early. I have to find my glasses. There they are. It's so much better finding my glasses than trying to find my purse, which always strikes fear into my heart. I can't find my purse. I'd like to tell you what I'd like to do today, which is to provide for you a kind of smorgasbord of reading. Is everybody okay with the sound? You can hear okay? Okay. Hello. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have after that about just about anything. And then I saw really good treats out there. And I know there's some shortbread. I will be making a beeline to the shortbread. So don't get in my way because you might get hurt. I'm going to start with a reading from the latest novel, excuse me, that I published. It's just come out in paperback. It's called The Story of Arthur Truelove. And I'm going to read you just one scene from that. Wait, I need vodka. Okay. So Arthur is an 83-year-old man who has lost his wife recently and goes to visit her every day in the cemetery. He has lunch there and visits his wife. Next door to him lives an 83-year-old woman named Lucille, who's really a little too outspoken and kind of hard to bear, but you kind of like her anyway. In this scene, Arthur and Lucille are sitting out on the porch together, and Lucille has had something very sad happen, and she's pretty downhearted. And she says, "It's so embarrassing to be useless." "Why, you're not useless," Arthur says. "Yes, I am." "You're just going through a hard time." "Yes, I am. But also, I am useless. I do nothing. I realized this was happening some time ago, everything falling off, but I made do. I had church. I read books and the paper. I had my garden. but all the lights seem off now. What's left for me? I am useless, and so are you. Arthur straightens in his chair, indignant. I'm not useless. You are too. All you do is go and visit your wife at the graveyard every single day. That's all you do. Well, first of all, I don't think it's useless to visit Nola. It is my great pleasure and honor to go to the resting place of the finest woman I ever knew and think about the boundless glory of my life with her. Okay, I'm sorry I said that. I know how you feel about Nola. I know how much it means to you to go and visit her. No, you don't, Arthur says. Nobody knows how much it means to me, except maybe her. And apart from that, I am not useless. But what do you do? Arthur rocks for a while. Lucille's chair has gone still, but Arthur rocks for a while. Let me ask you something, he says finally. What? Did you ever hear anyone say they wanted to be a writer? Yes, I've heard lots of people say that. He stops his rocking to look over at her. But what we need are readers, right? Where would writers be without readers? Who are they going to write for? And actors, who are they without an audience? Actors, painters, dancers, comedians, even just ordinary people doing ordinary things. What are they without an audience of some sort? See, that's what I do. I am the audience. I am the witness. I am the great appreciator. That's what I do. And that's all I want to do. I worked for a lot of years. I did a lot of things for a lot of years. Now, well, here I am in the rocking chair, and I don't mind it, Lucille. I don't feel useless. I feel lucky. So this title, I should say, is for sale, just in case. Christmas is coming. Hostess gift. Anyway, that title as well as others are for sale by the bookstore, who was kind enough to come and provide some titles. And the other two books I'll read from will be sold on a partner bill out there. So it's a little bit confusing, but if you want anything other than these two, visit your bookstore. But you'll make Bill happy if you want. So these came about because I was reluctantly persuaded to go onto Facebook. I really didn't want to go onto Facebook. First of all, I'm afraid of my computer. Secondly, I just find that so many of these things become a time suck, and I just didn't want to do it. So I was at a meeting at my publishers, and they said, well, do you have a Twitter account? And do you tweet, is what they said, and I didn't know what that meant. And I said, you mean talk about my books to people in a high voice? And they said, no, well, at least go on Facebook. So I went on Facebook, and it turned out that I liked it because it's a group of like-minded individuals that sort of cluster around, and it became a place for me to talk about things that are quite small oftentimes, but to me very beautiful and life-affirming. So maybe a conversation with a kid or something I see in nature. There's recipes in here too, because I love to eat so much. And so I'm going to read you just two selections from this first selection called Make Someone Happy. This is called Spring Peas. I finally got my tomatoes in yesterday. 2 tomato plants, as well as a basil plant and a green pepper plant. You would think I had created heaven and earth. I woke up this morning dying to go outside and see the plants, as though something spectacular might have happened overnight. I used to have a friend who lived in a house he built with his own hands. He had a lot of land, and he had a lot of animals, and he had a magnificent garden. When the peas first came out in the garden, he used to write me a letter, and I would drive from Boston to New Hampshire to visit him, so we could squat in the garden and eat those peas right off the vine. One time, his Cocker Spaniel had had puppies, and after we ate peas, we played with the puppies. They lurched about unsteadily and tumbled over each other in play, and my friend and I both laughed when they growled. It's been over 35 years since that day, and I've never had a better time, nor do I expect to. So often, you don't know when you're in the middle of doing something that it will turn out to be one of your best memories. But I knew it that day. I knew it, and so did he. I could tell by the way he looked over at me, the sun in his eyes making him squint, his smile brilliant and shy. A shy smile is a sight to behold on the face of a man who's over 50. He started to say something, then just shook his head. I smiled back at him and nodded. And this one is called Dinner Party. How many of you love to have dinner parties? Okay, 3 people. This post is for the rest of you. I had a dinner party the other night and was a nervous wreck beforehand. Even though I had decided to make food I was completely comfortable with. Food is like a horse. If it senses you're nervous, it will misbehave. It's going to be retro night, I had gaily told my guests, and so I made butternut squash soup, little individual barbecue lemon meatloaves, mashed potatoes, green peas, and an apple pie. But when I checked on a baking pie, I saw the top crust separating from the bottom and juice running out all over the place. I thought, what the? And then realized I'd forgotten to put in the flour as a thickener. I called my friend Phyllis, whom I'd already called in a panic about how much cheese to buy for appetizers and how long to wait to serve dinner after the guests arrive, and why do people have dinner parties anyway? And she answered her phone, this time by saying, now what? I told her that I'd screwed up the pie, and then also I didn't have a big enough tablecloth, and so I covered the table with a bunch of on-point vintage tablecloths. That sounds great, she said. Really? I said. And she said, yeah. Can you come over? I said in my little voice that I use when I'm feeling sorry for myself. I wish I could, she said in her soothing, motherly voice that she uses when she wants to sound soothing and motherly. I said I'd been going to make another pie, but I didn't want to. So I decided I would just admit to my guests that I'd made a mistake, and we'd have to eat the pie with spoons. Or, I said, I would tell them it was a very fancy French version of the apple pie, meant to be very, very juicy and eaten with spoons. Apple pie de plus jus Napoleon. Oh, don't lie, Phyllis said. They might know you're lying. Oh, they'll definitely know I'm lying, I said. But see, that will be part of the entertainment portion of it. But maybe when I serve the pie, I'll say, you know, there's a tradition in quilting where you always leave a mistake in the quilt because life isn't perfect, but it's still good. And there's a mistake in this pie, but I'm going to serve it anyway because you all are my friends and I feel safe with you. Yeah, Phyllis said, and again I asked her to come over, and again she said no, she does live in California. And then we hung up. Well, when it was time to serve the pie, I said my little speech, and then guess what? The pie was fine. I don't know how that happened, and I choose to think it was a miracle. I'm going to read you a couple from the other. These posts, incidentally, were made into books at the request of the people who read them. The first time someone suggested it, I thought, that's so nice that she suggested that. I'm never going to do that. But then a lot of other people did, so I thought, well, okay. So I did one, and then after a while someone said, why don't you do a second book? And I said, okay. No persuading that time. So this is the second book. And this includes, for those of you who love dogs, there's a part at the end about my dog Homer, whom I rescued as a 1-year-old, and he was a holy terror. Really, phew, he bit me. Anyway, he turned out to be the most wonderful dog ever. And he died on his birthday at 14, and so the story of his life is in here at the very end. Also lots of pictures. So I was sitting there in the back, and I was having such a good time. I hope I don't embarrass you, but I was having such a good time sitting by you. She was leafing through the newspaper, and it's a local paper. So I got to see all these swell stories about little kids sitting in front of a pile of lobsters and an entreaty to help Chloe. And so she's looking for something, and she's going past it. She's calling out some of the stories. She goes, okay, these are all the dead people. So this is a neat segue into this, which is called obits. Well, I wasn't expecting this, I told Bill, after bursting into tears at the breakfast table. Let me back up just a bit. It is my habit to read the obits every now and then. I see them as consolidated and illuminating life stories that do a lot for letting me know someone I never knew. I think it's important for us to know each other generally, and obits provide a daily window into our species. But the other day, the obit was for a very young man, around 18 years old. I contemplated cutting and pasting the obit here, but it seemed that would be overstepping some boundary that I want to honor. So let me just say that this young man was born with disabilities that meant he could never eat, apart from being tube-fed, but that his favorite job in school was helping with food prep for others. The obit said right at the start that this notice was meant to celebrate a life that, although short, was well-lived, and to celebrate as well a beautiful death, a person in a room with a glorious view, under a blanket that had sentimental meaning for him, being held by the people who loved him most, and who sent him off to that unknown shore with some measure of regret, but mostly with love and everlasting gratitude. It was so honest, that obit, so deeply felt, so brave, and in many ways I would have been moved by that alone. But the biggest thing that got to me, I think, was that in the face of considerable adversity, someone consciously chose the path of love and light, seemingly every day of his life. I feel that we are living in times that assault us every day. I feel that the national mood is dark and despairing, but I also still believe that most people are basically good. We get lost sometimes, we get confused, we get combative, but at heart, we are basically good. In the paper today, I saw a photo of a man in a suit, which is to say not a paramedic, but probably a passerby, delivering CPR to someone in London on the day of that horrific attack. And I thought, well, there you go. There's a man who was called to service at a time of great urgency, and he stepped right up. I guess I believe that more people would than not, that there are more of us who would extend a hand to someone in need than not. If that makes me naive, may I live forever in the land of naivete. So, in this challenging time, here's my mission: to sit each day in meditation, brief though it is, in order to remind myself of the goodness all around me. It's not always easy. It's often hard, but it's too important not to try. P.S. After I burst into tears, I showed the obit to Bill, who read it, and then, in a very quiet voice, said, well, I'm glad you found that. This one is a little change of pace, and it's called The Drive-In. We used to go a lot when I was a kid. We had a station wagon, so my dad would put the seats down, and voila, a bed for when we kids got sleepy. We put on our pajamas, and when dusk came, We went to the land of gravel and gently sloping hillocks and metal speakers that affixed to the roll-down windows, which allowed the mosquitoes in. But one had then to and must now suffer for art. After we found our parking spot, we kids raced out to the playground completely unembarrassed about being in PJs because all the other kids were in their PJs too. Cowboy pajamas, roughly pink baby doll pajamas, boys wearing their dad's t-shirts that came down to their knees. You saw it all. When the sky started darkening, the commercials would come on, interspersed with an image of a clock showing how much time was left before the show. Tangy hot pizza, the announcer would say. Ice cold Coca-Cola. It was a bid to get everyone to go to the snack bar where the food was both terrible and irresistible. And we hardly ever got to go, so naturally I really wanted to go. But there we kids were, running around the playground at breakneck speed, hogging the little platform at the top of the slide because then you felt like king of the playground, making the teeter-totter jump, helping push the merry-go-round, and then movie time. We'd race back to the car and settle in and think, oh boy, we can stay up really late. But then we fell asleep right away. Cut to the teen years. Most of us got in drive-ins free by hiding in someone's trunk. Many of us went on dates to the drive-in and we never saw much of the movie. For the boys, it was a question about how much they could get. For the girls, it was a question of how far we would let them go. There you were in the middle of a great kiss, and here would come the wandering hands, and your antenna would go up, and you would have to make difficult decisions. The boys were in paradise, and the girls were at a summit conference. One night, a guy who wanted to go farther than I wanted him to said, "Come on, I'm going to blow a gasket." I asked him what the heck a gasket was, and that spoiled the mood pretty well. My taste leaned toward preppy guys in high school, but the best date I ever had was with this guy I met at Steak and Shake who was practically a gangster. He pulled into the parking lot of the S&S in a chartreuse-colored sports car with "barf" written on the side in yellow spray paint. You can see why I was instantly attracted. I guess I liked how boldly unconventional he was, driving around in jeans and a t-shirt, his blonde hair hanging in his eyes. We had one date, and he took me to the drive-in. I was very disappointed when he came to pick me up because he had greased his hair back and cleaned up and was driving a different car. But never mind, off we went to the drive-in, and he produced a 6-pack of beer, which I declined and he did not. And then we made out the whole time, and he was and is the best kisser I ever met, ever. I went home with lips swollen to about 3 times the size, and I never saw him again. Let's see. If you would like, I can, after I read the story of Arthur Trulove, I missed the fictional town of Mason. I missed a place where people were kind to one another. And so I wrote another book. It takes place in the same place and it has many of the same characters. I can give you, actually in the bathroom, I promised someone a sneak preview, so you don't get to vote. It's all decided. Here we go. This is called Night of Miracles. It's coming out in November. And if you are so inclined, I think you could probably pre-order it from the bookstore. But anyway, here's a little snippet from that. After she has dried and put away her supper dishes, Lucille Howard goes out onto her front porch to stand with her hands on her hips, taking in a better view of the night sky. From the kitchen window, the stars are so clear they look like diamonds. Out here, it's even more glorious. As a child, Lucille thought stars were diamonds, and that if only she prayed in the right way, the cigar box she kept under her bed would be filled with them some morning, and she could make a necklace of them. Never happened. Well, of course it never happened. Stars are not diamonds. They're suns, really. just balls of gas. If there's one thing Lucille hates, it's how science has to rain on Whimsy's parade. It's cold enough for a jacket, this being the 1st of October, but Lucille is still in the habit of summer, the roses still blooming, and so has neglected to put one on. It feels like too much work to go back in and get one, so she settles into a rocking chair, wraps her arms around herself, and moves vigorously back and forth. She gives herself a challenge. She'll stay out here until it feels like her teeth might chatter before she goes inside. Then she'll draw a bath and have a soak in Epsom salts. One thing she's grateful for are the grab bars she's had installed, though even with them, getting herself down into the tub is a Herculean task that reminds her a bit of elephants lowering themselves onto tiny stools, the way they used to have to do in the circus. She's glad no one could see her the way she puffs and puffs and grunts. Lord, they would say, why don't you switch to showers? You're 88. True, but mostly she feels like she's 68. When she was 68, she felt like she was 48. And so, although she knows the logic is off, she tells everyone that she feels like she's 48. Lucille will not give up her baths. No. In the tub is what she thinks being stoned must be like. She enjoys a feeling of timelessness and wide content, a floaty, perfumed detachment. After her bath, she'll read her May Finchy book, and then she'll go to sleep. She sees a neighbor coming out to walk his dog. Lucille has nothing against dogs, but that one is the ugliest thing she's ever seen. An ancient, mid-sized gray mutt who looks like he needs a shave, bugged-out eyes like a pug, a tail that looks more like Eeyore's than a dog's, and his name, Henry. Now, why in the world would you give a dog that looks like that a name befitting a cane? Hello, Lucille, the man calls over. Hello, Jason. Lucille answers, so she muffles the name a bit. Is it Jason? Or is it Jeremy? Or Jeffrey? It's a little past the point where she can ask. The neighbors have been there for almost a year. The J person, his wife, Abby, and their 10-year-old son, whose name is, well, for heaven's sake, starts with an L. Liam? Leroy? Lester? She closes her eyes to concentrate. Lincoln. That's it. Another strange name, if you ask her. What's become of Spot for dogs? What's become of Mary and Sally and Billy for children? She has kept her eyes closed and is startled now by the sound of footsteps, Jay and his dog coming up onto her porch. She cries out and leaps to her feet. Sorry, the man says, did I scare you? Yes. I'm sorry. It's all right. She pulls her hand down from where it had flown up onto her chest. I just wanted to ask you if you'd be free to come to our house for dinner tomorrow. Abby's been asking you to come. Abby's been meaning to ask you forever, but tomorrow night, what time? 7? 7? 6, the man says, smiling. That's better, she says. I'll bring dessert. She has some cake left over from the last class she taught. Her baking classes are getting so popular that she recently put an ad in the local paper to hire some help. The man turns around. We don't. I hope this doesn't offend you, but we don't eat dessert. Lucille cannot think of one thing to say, but finally manages a stiff, I see. And here is a bit of a miracle right now, because what she really, really thought she'd say is, never mind then, I don't want to come. They're probably vegans. They'll probably have a square loaf of some brownish mass on an ugly pottery platter, and a bunch of vegetables so barely cooked they're next to raw. Lucille will put a pot pie in her oven before she goes over, so she can eat when she gets home. Oh, it's so fun to hear people laugh. I'm happy to take, unless it's a sad part, I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Yes?
I'm just going to move over here because I don't like going to discussions or presentations and someone asks a question on the first row, and nobody can hear what's being asked, and so the answer doesn't make any sense at all.
Unless the author
We'll
repeats
see.
the question.
Yeah. You can't.
But this is funny.
This is, yeah. Several of us are here from Southport. We have a book talk group on the Southport Memorial Library, and I have a notorious problem for never being able to remember the author, the title, any of the characters, or the plot. And I go hoping that one of the other people will kind of give a synopsis, because I borrow books and I don't even have the book with me. But the exception to this is that 20 years ago, when I was in my early 50s, I read a book by this author, and I remembered her name. I remember the title of the book, The Pull of the Moon. I remembered the whole plot of when Nan's running away from home, driving across the United States, and all the things that she did. I didn't remember any of the things, but one thing that stands out in my mind is when she pulled into the dooryard of a house, a farmhouse, and the woman was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair shelling peas. And she thought that this traveler, the main character Nan, was there to fix the telephone because the telephone hadn't been working. So all Nan wanted to do was sit on the front porch and listen to the plunk of the peas going, I can even imagine the bowl, which wasn't described, into this bowl. And I want to know where you came up with that. That's my question.
Well, you're exactly right. I could not have repeated the question. What a wonderful story. Thank you. Where did I come up with that? I have no idea. But I will tell you, that woman's name is Eugenie. And when I thought of her, she really came fully formed. I knew about the poems that her husband wrote her, that I knew everything about her, sort of instantly. And I think, like some of the characters I write, she was written to bring me comfort and to remind me of the pleasure of small tactile things. That scene struck a chord with a lot of people, actually. Someone wanted to make a play out of it, and I said, well, I myself have made a play of The Pull of the Moon, so no. I went out to California on tour, and he came to the reading. He was insistent that he was going to do a play out of that scene, so I had to tell the bookseller, sit back, so they kind of stood between me and him, but he was so insistent that I was afraid that he was just going to do it anyway, and then I would have to kind of admire him, only also I'd be angry. Anyway, that scene did resonate for me, so I'm glad it did with you. Yes?
I live here in Maine now, and I'm very happy with my life, but back in 2001, I'm going to get teary. I was in a very, very bad situation, and I just didn't know how I would get through it. And I picked up a book called Open House, and I was reading it, and Oprah had said, if you have feelings, write them down. So I had a brand new book, this is the first page, and it said, yesterday I was reading Elizabeth Berg's Open House. Some of her words jumped right off the page 139.
Do you want to stand up and talk to me? We can start a whole new thing.
Anyway, the sentence that really got to me was, I push away pain all day, and the moment I put my arms down, it walks into me and has a seat. And that's how I got through the day, pushing it away, and every night when I was alone, there it would come. And I said, oh, and then I started writing in this journal, and I'm very happy now, so thank you.
Thank you. It's a good thing to do, writing out your feelings like that. It really can help. Thank you. That was brave. Anyone else? Have a question? Yes.
How do you come up with your ideas for the books? Is it somebody unique, a situation you run into? What inspires you?
You know, it's always different. In the case of Talk Before Sleep, which is a book about, really it's about women's friendship, but it's focused on a group of women who help one of their own through breast cancer. And that came about because I did lose a very good friend to breast cancer, and I never intended to write about it in any way, but after she died, I was struck with how important female friendships are and the beautiful times that we all had in such a sad time. So I wanted to, I guess, get it out of my system in a way. For the Pull of the Moon, my friend Phyllis, you'll remember her from the dinner party, she's much older than I am, a couple of years. She was going through menopause, and I had not gone through menopause yet. And she was complaining all the time about this and about frozen shoulder, all this stuff. And I thought, oh, for God's sake, how hard can it be? Well, so I was imagining what it must be like for Phyllis, and then I had my own experience. But I thought also that it's a time of life in your 50s, I think, when inevitably you begin to look back a little bit and think about how you've gotten to where you are now. It's not the beginning of your life anymore. The possibilities are not all wide open anymore. I'm turning 70, and I found that there's ageism because I'm trying to adopt a puppy, and I know they're looking at my application and saying, oh no. But anyway, so it's a reflective time, and I think sometimes that a road trip, it just opens up everything, and you have time, and you can wander. And I like to travel alone because I like to stop here and there. And I think a lot of women are like that, and a lot of men are focused on getting there. So I don't know how to negotiate that. I think maybe a little contract needs to be made at the beginning of the trip. Okay, I am allowed 2 stops per hour. Oh no, 1? You know. Anyway, so I imagined what that would be like. And when I finished the novel, I wanted to have Nan's husband's point of view represented. So I put the last chapter, his reaction to all of this, because it didn't seem fair somehow, you know, like, well, what's the other side of this?
Right.
So I sent the book in, and my editor read the last part and said, what's he doing in there? So we took him out. But he is in a short story, I think it's in the short story collection called Ordinary Life. It's called Martin's Letter to Nan, so he got to have his say. Yes?
I just want to thank you for writing without pretension and so honestly about your characters. It just feels like we're part of it. My sister introduced me to you many, many years ago. She said, Susan, I've just read an author and she writes just like you talk. She could be you. It's so weird. And so I picked up your books and found a sister and a friend. And I just thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes?
And to follow up, I think you're lovely in every way. There could possibly be.
I'm moving here.
And you're going to be scrumptious in your 70s. And I hope you find Maine as lovely as you are.
Oh, thank you very much. I have to tell you, you know, it's not a great day, but it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, and I keep saying, look, look. Like there was maybe you know this restaurant with a huge lobster. And then there was a kind of junk store place that I really wanted to go. And the places where you can eat fried clams and ice cream. Oh. Yeah. No, I'm very excited to be here. And when we planned this trip and knew we would be spending so much time in Maine, I was really happy. Because even though I lived in Boston for a long time, I didn't get to come up here very often. I used to come to Brookland of Maine, is that what? Yeah, they're gone. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here. Yes?
You talked early on about how you trained as a nurse, and I'm a nurse, and then a life care and hospice nurse. and you made a comment about relationships. And it's interesting, I don't remember how fast I started an IV or put in a Foley catheter, but I surely remember relationships with my patients.
Yeah.
I wonder if you would elaborate and expand upon
I have to laugh at you. I assume everyone knows what a Foley catheter is, unfortunately. So, when I was in nursing school, I'll answer your question, but I want to share this anecdote. When I was in nursing school, I was also working as an aide, and so I thought I really had a leg up. You know, I thought I knew all kinds of things other people didn't do. So when we had our lesson about how to insert a Foley catheter, I said, I don't need to watch film. I have watched people do this 1,000 times. I know how to do it. And they said, okay, go ahead. So luckily, it was a mannequin. With sterile gloves, and you were meant to take the tongs and clean off the area and then insert the catheter. I didn't use the tongs. I just grabbed the cotton ball and swiped it down, and they were going, what are you doing? They were horrified. So, you know, a little infection possibility. So I was immediately humbled then and many times in nursing school. In terms of relationship, I think one of the most important things that nursing taught me is we were told when you take care of a patient, you have unconditional positive regard for that patient. Which means that when you go into a patient room, you just check your judgment at the door. And you try to see that person wholly and with understanding for the way that they are, that there are reasons for the way we are, no matter who we are. And that, in essence, you try to love that person, no matter who they are. And you try to put yourself in their shoes, which is great for a writer, right? I mean, to have that kind of empathy for every character you write. And there are patients you never forget, ever. I started out in med-surg, went to ICU and CCU, and ended up doing home visits. And I wrote a book called Never Change that drew heavily from that experience. There was one patient who was so fearsome that nobody wanted to go and see him. He was just a huge guy and a yeller, and he didn't like any of his nurses. And when a nurse went out to see him one day, the next day he'd be on the phone saying, "Dave, Mr. Washington, don't you send that nurse around here no more." This went on every time a nurse went out, so naturally I was very excited to go and see him. And we became such good friends, and he made potato salad one day, and he blocked the door so I couldn't get out until I tasted his potato salad. I said, thanks, I don't want to. He said, God, that's pickle in there. I said, okay. It was really good. It was really. So, but so many, I mean, poignant memories and funny memories. Also, I just want to say that someday nurses and teachers will get paid what they deserve. Yes.
I just discovered you, and it's, I recently picked up a book that I cannot get out of my mind. You wrote it, and it was All Are Welcome Here.
We are all welcome here.
And I know that wasn't your story.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I mean, I just can't get over it. And I know that at first you didn't want to write it.
Right.
The daughter asked you to write it,
Right.
and you said, well, I don't do that.
Yeah.
But she persuaded you to
Right.
write her mother's and her
Right.
story. And so when I saw that you were here, I said, oh, God, you know. But I just wondered how that came about and what that must have been like writing this extraordinary family.
Yeah.
You know,
She's talking about a novel called We Are All Welcome Here. And I wrote it because someone asked me to tell her mother's story, and I said, you should do that. You should write your mother's story. I don't do that kind of thing. And if I were to write about your mother, I would fictionalize it. It would be a novel. And she said, that's fine. I want her story, her spirit. Her daughter's wonderful.
Do you
And-
still stay in touch with them?
Yeah, yeah. The mother was a nurse. When she was 9 months pregnant, she got polio, and she was put into an iron lung. The doctors thought that both the mother and the baby would die when she gave birth. Neither did. This daughter who contacted me, her name is Marianne, was born in an iron lung. And her mother was left paralyzed from the neck down. And when the husband realized that this was going to be her life, she would just be able to move her head, he left her. And in the book, there's only one child, a girl. In real life, she had 3 children. And the father said he wanted to adopt those children out, and he was leaving. And nice guy. So she said, over my dead body, she kept those children and raised them herself. And a friend of hers told her, you're going to have a way to discipline those kids. You can't move. You've got to have a way to discipline them. So what she did was she bit their finger when they misbehaved. And then she would tell them to go clean it off and put a Band-Aid on. So strong was her will that when they did something wrong and she would say, give me your finger, they did. I mean, what was she going to do? She couldn't do anything. So I set the book in Tupelo, Mississippi for reasons that were unknown to me at the time, but it turned out that there was a parallel story with the civil rights movement and with people withholding rights that should be there, not only for African Americans, but for people with disabilities and so on. This was nothing I planned. When I write, I don't plan, I just let it happen. And I was really afraid to show her the book because it was so important to her. And the galley came out. You know what a galley is? It comes out in advance of the book. So I could have sent her the galley, but I didn't want to send her the galley because I was too afraid. But my publisher sent it to her. And she called me on the phone and she was crying, and I thought, oh no. But she was happy. She was very moved and she loved it. And she came and to a reading of mine in the South that I went to, and she came to my house and she was wonderful. We had a little party.
Well, I'm so glad you wrote it.
Yeah, I'm glad I wrote it
It's
too.
extraordinary story. and you
She
did
was
a
an
great
extraordinary woman. She went on to get a degree in counseling, and she counseled disabled people. She took notes with her teeth. Well, with a pencil. Pretty hard. Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Oh, there it is.
How did you train to be a writer? I mean, you had this career as a nurse for many years, and then all of a sudden you switched. Did you take writing classes?
No. I think that writers are born and not made. I think that you can take classes to inspire you to get on with this thing, get going here. But I don't really think you can teach anything but technique. I don't think you can teach a person to write. Either you can or you can't. So I always loved writing. When I was 9 years old, I submitted a poem to American Girl magazine, which I thought, surely I'm going to get published and get a lot of money. So I told my dad I was going to buy him a Cadillac. And he said, oh, okay. And I said, I am. And he then said, okay. And it was like he believed me, and that meant everything. Well, not only did they reject the poem, they rejected it so fast, I barely, anyway. Cut to 35 years, anyway, many years later when Oprah happened. When Oprah happens, you sell a lot of books. And I called my dad, and I said, Dad, do you still like Cadillacs? And he said, not kind of like Lincolns now. I said, well, I'm going to buy you a Lincoln then, because I told you when I was 9 years old that I was going to be a writer and I was going to buy you a Cadillac. He said, you're not going to buy me a car. I said, yes, I am. He said, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. This went on for about half an hour. And then the next day he called me and he said, were you serious? Oh, I ended the conversation by saying, either you pick out a car or I'm going to. So he called me the next day and said, I down at the Cadillac and he picked out a car so red, it looked like someone who worked with Ladies of the Evening. But he loved that car. He kept it, there was not a bit of dust in there. He had his little blanket, first aid kit, Terry Como with tiny short hairs. And after he got macular degeneration, my mom said, he goes out and talks to them.